Okay, we're going to finish the conditional statements. We left off in verse 7 last night or yesterday. We're going to pick up with verse 8. So we pick it up. It says if we say that, and notice immediately that he's picking up the same thing that he said in verse 6. It's the same idea. If we say that we have no sin, then we are deceiving ourselves, and the truth, I'm going to tab that over because he picks it up again in 6. The truth is not in us. Now let's look at we don't practice the truth in verse 6. So I'm going to line those up. So truth and truth. I'm going to bold that for you just to show you the line here. So then some of the observations I make, note the repetition in the protasis, which remember was the first part of the conditional statement. So the verse 6, we say that, we say that. And then the second half of the conditional statement picks up the first part picks up the theme of lying in 6b, except we're not only lying to ourselves, we're deceiving ourselves. And note also the continuation. The impetus moves from not practicing the truth into the truth is not in us. So we're not practicing here, but here the truth is not in us. So it's a ramping up of the problem. So then, in contrast, there's a but. There's a but here. It's implied. But if, and that contrast is implied. But if we confess our sins, and I'm going to go ahead and pick that up and bring over my observations from that part. It's like a fine composer. It's a variation of the theme. If we say that, if we confess if we say that in 6, if we say that, or if we confess, so it's the same idea of talking. In the context, the contrast confessions should have the same weight as practice walk. So we confess, or we practice, we walk, or we confess. It's the same kind of weight. If we confess our sins, then, and again, I'm going to pick up the observations in the second half of the conditional statement. So he's faithful and righteous to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So why is he righteous, and why mention it here? So that's a question that comes to mind. What would make him unrighteous to forgive our sins? Those are questions. I don't have an answer for that, but that's the question. So let's go back and look at some thoughts in verse 8, just to pick that up a little bit. Saying and not walking is characterized in verse 6 as not practicing the truth. However, saying one does not have sin is much worse because it's evident that truth is not in one. So it seems that the claim that one has no sin is worse than saying one has fellowship and not walk with Christ. The second in the series of conditional statements expands and extends the notion of living in reality. So I'm going to make some other observations here in 9. So the contrast between 8 and 9 is stark. The truth is not being in us and not being cleansed from all unrighteousness. There's no room for false piety. The reality is that the path of righteousness is to admit that we are not. Finally, the last conditional statement, here the ante is raised. That's verse 10. That's actually a comment on verse 10. If we say we have not sinned, and this breaks the pattern. If you think about this, look at what happens here. We're using the if we say thing again. So let me back up. If we walk, if we say that, so if we say that again is there, I'm going to change that that again to a different color. If we say that we have not sinned, this breaks a pattern. He does not have a contrast here because he's already given it. This is emphasis. Continues and amplifies the thought in verse 8. So if we say we have no sin, if we say we have not sinned, then we make him a liar, and his word is not in us. That's a huge upping of the ante here. So let's look at that. Since what I mean by that, some of the thoughts here. Since God says there is none righteous, then if we state that we have not sinned, we're calling God a liar. Not that we've moved from being a liar in verse 6 to calling God a liar in verse 10 by not acknowledging our sin. So I'm going to summarize the entire passage, or 5 through 10, like this. I'm going to bring this down and put it underneath verse 10. So John sounds a lot like James 2 here, saying the right things, knowing the proper way to act without any real change in your life is not redemption. Salvation by faith, but that faith renders a change that has evidence. If there's no evidence of life, there is no life. If the walk is in the dark, the walker is in darkness. So that's some of the conclusions we have so far. We may look at this again tomorrow, but I just wanted to show you this is how I go through a passage. If you have any questions or further questions, let me know in the comments. And we may or may not come back to this, but I just wanted to show you how I use these going through. Actually, what I may do, come back tomorrow and show you how to use some interpretive questions to try to unpack this a little bit more. We'll consider that. We'll see what happens. Okay, it's been good going through this with you. I hope you've enjoyed it. Again, I may do it again tomorrow, I may not. We'll see. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.